Welcome to the FootBridge Energy Leadership Series, where energy leaders build what powers tomorrow.
Today, we are joined with Michael Wood, the Chief of Staff for DG Matrix. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Luke, thanks for having me. I know we initially connected over our shared activity of hosting podcasts, and so it's always fun to get on the other side of the mic. So super excited to be with you.
Yeah, no, I saw a ton of your content across my feed on LinkedIn, and then I learned a little bit more about what you guys were doing. So I thought it would be a really great conversation. You know, what we're trying to do here in the FootBridge Energy Leadership Series is just speak to different leaders across the energy sector. We've spoken with presidents of companies that provide equipment to the utility sector, PMO tools to help construction owners better organize their data and projects. We've had a bunch of different conversations with construction leaders. And so I thought what you were building at DG Matrix would be a really nice addition to that conversation, especially I think you bring the lens of how you're bringing more talent into the energy space as well in your personal side. Well, if you could introduce yourself quickly to the audience, then maybe we can jump into the questions from there.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Michael Wood, Chief of Staff at DG Matrix. Mechanical engineering background. I started off at Duke University where I studied mechanical engineering plus energy systems. And that's really where I got my start in the energy world. While I was there, did a number of different activities, worked for a few different energy companies. And that really led me to founding Energy Terminal, which is a media, community, and talent platform that really started in the podcast space and then quickly evolved into helping some of the largest energy companies in the world attract the best possible talent to really catalyze this generational shift of talent into the energy industry to meet the generational shifts that industry is experiencing. So now I've been in my role at DG Matrix for the last 2.5 years on what has been a absolutely incredible roller coaster, growing from very early stage company to over 250 people globally.
Amazing. And so my first question was going to be, when you were in school, what led you to energy terminal? But I guess also you had energy systems as part of what you were focused on there. Was there something growing up, anything before school even that led you to see that you'd want to be in energy? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. I'll start with the growing up because it is very apt. I grew up around the energy industry, really, even though I didn't necessarily recognize it at the time. So I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and a large portion of my family is from Southwest Texas, a town called Carrizo Springs, that is really right in the heart of the Eagleford. So during the shale boom, 12, 15 years ago, over the course of a couple months, I saw my grandparents' small town grow from maybe 5,000 people to 12 or 15,000 people. And just seeing the power of the industry and all of the incredible benefits it brought to the community, and of course, my family's involvement was just absolutely fascinating. And then I positioned that right next to all of the work that I grew up really passionate about around our family's ranch and wildlife management and land management and sustainability. Those were two of the most important things to me growing up. And then as I kind of got into college, there were still two other interests that I hadn't quite yet figured out how to blend in. One was entrepreneurship. So I started my first company when I was 9 years old selling fishing lures, believe it or not. And all my life knew that entrepreneurship was going to be a core part of my path. And then finally, the last one was engineering. So got to Duke, all focused on entrepreneurship, had the energy background behind me, had the sustainability background, and now it was time to put it together. And it really wasn't until I did an internship after my freshman year. So working for a company called Streamline Innovations in San Antonio, Texas. And it was like a light bulb moment. It was truly that eureka moment for me of, this is how I can blend my interests in entrepreneurship and engineering and sustainability and my family background in energy. And from there, I knew that this is going to be the industry that I spend the rest of my career in, no question.
That's amazing. I love the fishing lure business. I've got a buddy that does ties, so he may be interested in discussing that with you.
It was a lot of fun and got started just making them for myself, and then started catching fish, and then people started buying them. And then I took a stack of fishing magazines that I borrowed from Tackle Store. I didn't buy them, I borrowed, and started cold calling editors of the magazine saying, "Hello, my name is Michael Wood. I'm 9 years old. What's an ad and how do I get one?" And I was sold on entrepreneurship from
Wow.
then and there, and know that that's going to be a very important part of my career.
So it's Steve Jobs cold calling a Bill Hewlett.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, the other piece of my question was what led you, you knew energy, but what about the community aspect with Energy Terminal? What made you say, okay, I want to really create either a podcast or whatever it is that supports this community?
Great question. And funny enough, this actually is going to go back to cold calling. So this is summer after my sophomore year at Duke. I was working for a startup based in Houston that was in the energy industry, doing some work around utilities and resiliency. And I was doing a lot of business development, cold calling, which was definitely new to me. And I had just gotten off a string of maybe a dozen cold calls that maybe didn't go so well. Maybe someone threw out some colorful words at me. I just remember sitting in my office chair and spinning around. I was in a place called Greentown Labs, which is an incubator type of environment. There were about 20 to 30 startups there at the time. And I spin around after a series of not so successful cold calls and look out, and there's like 20 or 30 of the most incredible founders building the most incredible companies. And so I just went around and started tapping on shoulders and had all these mini 5-10 minute conversations about advice and my career, and just really just trying to point me in the right direction. And I learned a ton about entrepreneurship and building companies during that summer. I learned a ton about myself, learned a ton about the energy industry. And so as I'm getting toward the end of the summer, um, I was thinking about, how do I bring these conversations initially back to Duke? I had been very involved in the energy community there, but there are still so many misconceptions that we were fighting every day. There was misconceptions that, I have to be an engineer to work in the energy industry. There was misconceptions that the energy industry is all just old traditional oil and gas. There's no innovation. There's no excitement. And contrasting that with what I was seeing on the ground was there's this very clear information gap, as well as, a generational gap, especially. So those were the two issues that we set out to solve. And I settled on a podcast because I believe conversations were the best medium to learn. And I wanted to model those 20, 30, 10-minute conversations that I had over the summer, bring that to a wider audience. So we started with the podcast with a twofold mission. Number one was to bring conversations about the industry into the hands of young people. And then the second was to bridge the generational gap. So to bring mainly senior energy executives who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s later in their career with the next generation of talent. And that's how we started.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, clearly I'm a believer in that. That's what we're trying to do here. And just even if one person sees it and it helps them to find their next career opportunity or upskill in the right way, that's part of the value we're trying to bring. So it's really cool that you had that insight while you were still in college and probably understand podcasting better than a lot of us out there. It seems to be a big market nowadays. So I'd like to maybe transition to how you found DG Matrix, how you learned about that opportunity. If I recall, there was a conversation with the CEO or you had worked together a little bit before. So would love to hear from you on that.
Absolutely. So, at Energy Terminal, it was a completely transformative experience for me. I had the privilege of spending most of my time talking with very senior level energy executives, most of whom had, quite frankly, no business talking with some 20-year-old kid in college trying to get other young people motivated into the industry. But really, after launching the media platform, what happened is that we had a lot of companies reach out much more directly to us and reveal the problems that they were having in connecting with young talent. There was one in particular. I had just spoken at a conference hosted by Energy Dialogues, who's one of the main sponsors of Energy Terminal. And a very, very senior energy executive from a very well-known company came up to me and said, "Hey, Michael, absolutely loved what you were talking about today. We are really, really struggling to attract the next generation of talent. How can you help us?" And so that initial conversation sparked not necessarily a pivot in strategy, but a renewed focus of our strategy on working much more directly with these large energy companies. ABB, BP, NextEra were a few with whom we've worked. And that really got us much more directly into those types of conversations. And so one of the folks that I had gotten to know during that time was a gentleman by the name of Harun Anam. He was at that point the chief technology officer of a company called Smart Wires, also fellow Duke grad and living in the Raleigh area. And we got to know each other and kind of developed like a mentor-like relationship, having conversations and getting advice. And he had a very, very successful career in the industry. And then fast forward a few months and we were speaking together at a Duke Energy event. And after we did the speaking event, he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, I've got something that I think is going to be very interesting to you. Would you like to go to lunch and learn a little bit more about it?" So he took me to lunch after the speaking event and pulls up on his iPad. At that time, it still said Newco on it. DG Matrix did not have a name. It was about a month away from being founded. And he just starts scrolling through some of the concept drawings for what they were building. And over the course of subsequent few months, I had accepted a job to go to a big consulting firm. And long story short, he says, "Hey, this is a once in a multi-generation opportunity to completely reshape the future of the energy industry. Do you want to do this with me?" And so, of course, I said yes. And I started full-time at DG Matrix in July of 2023.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, obviously you built a lot of the value that brought that conversation to you. So hopefully we can have more young people find themselves in those opportunities by moving towards energy, right? That's a little more apparent now than it probably was 2 or 3 years ago, even though. So
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the conversations that we were having 4 years ago around getting people into the energy industry are very, very different from the
yeah,
conversations that we're having now. And it's really two things. It's AI and electrification. And now that electricity demands and power availability is a front page Wall Street Journal topic, it is no longer something that is taken for granted, I guess I'll say, because for the last 20 years, electricity demand in the US has been more or less constant, maybe 0.5%, 1% a year growth. And now we're facing these unprecedented demands, and we have to completely rethink how infrastructure is built. How are we going to future-proof for all of these new use cases, for data center load growth, for electrification load growth? And so that is making at least the energy terminal's job quite a bit easier, because there's a lot more visibility into the energy industry, and we can now really, really focus the team's efforts on driving people to the most impactful opportunities rather than on necessarily justifying at the highest levels why the energy industry is the place to be.
awesome. So I know you guys are working on kind of that connective tissue between the power systems and the high voltage kind of delivery of that power to those systems, whether it's EV, data center. Could you explain to our listeners what you guys are doing, maybe in a couple sentences, and then maybe I know you've given me some good metaphors as well that I really enjoyed of what that actually looks like at high level too.
Absolutely. So my favorite metaphor that I like to use is that DG Matrix is the heart and the brain of the energy system. So we're the heart in the sense of think about us sitting right at the center of the energy system, integrating multiple energy sources and loads simultaneously. So we can pump power between the grid and solar and battery and route that to an AI data center load, route that to power a building, to charge a vehicle. And we're also the brain in the sense that we are making the decisions about how we can optimize how power is flowing to reduce your energy costs, to supplement the available power from the grid, to lower your cost of electricity, to improve your resiliency. And so those are really what the three kind of core advantages boil down to. And every single one of our customers, whether it's a data center or a big retail company or a gas station, a fleet charging hub, they want three things. They say, how can I get more power faster? How can I lower my energy costs? And how can I improve my energy reliability? Because the reality is that the conversations that we're having around energy now are totally different than they were 6 to 12 months ago for the exact same reasons that we just discussed. The utility prices are increasing. Reliability is no longer being taken for granted, and people need consolidated energy solutions like DG Matrix can deliver to make sure that they're protecting their business against whatever their energy needs are going to throw at them in the future.
That's amazing. It's a really good pitch too. Very clear, a good set of customer problems you guys are solving. And the metaphor is really memorable. I know I came home after our first conversation and I was talking to my wife about the heart and the brain of the data center. So that's a good one. So I know, you were kind of alluding to this as well. There's a lot of discussion about the grid being constrained. From your vantage point, what do you think those bottlenecks are, and where do you see the momentum around that being fixed or getting accelerated?
Excellent question. And I think a bit of a history here, and I alluded to it briefly, because electricity demands haven't increased meaningfully in the last 20 years, we haven't had to innovate at the same pace. Utilities haven't had to deploy new infrastructure at the same pace as other parts of the world where they're growing much more rapidly. So we got caught flat-footed a little bit. And so really the big bottlenecks in terms of bringing new loads online is really related to grid interconnection. And there's a few subcomponents of that. Number one is the actual utility service upgrades. So right now, for a number of different customers that we have, they're looking at 2, 3, 5, sometimes even 7-year lead times to get the interconnection agreement from the utility to be able to, or to get the service upgrade from the utility to be able to connect their data center, connect their fleet charging hub. Obviously, they can't wait that long, sort of forced to look at other solutions, or most of the time, they're forced to look at different sites. The second is component lead times, especially on transformers. For a lot of the types of transformers, we're looking at 2, 3-year lead times, and that can be a major bottleneck in terms of getting projects online. And then the third one is really around the unique challenges that are being presented by AI data centers. These AI workloads create very spiky loads, and those fluctuation can cause all sorts of challenges for the grid. Harmonics, very, very fast ramp rates that utility cannot handle very well, all sorts of issues. And so that's a really, really big one that we need to solve for. And then on the momentum piece, kind of where we see the biggest innovation and the biggest interest is in how we can shift energy generation locally and behind the meter. That is the best, that is the fastest way to get new large loads online without straining the utility and without breaking the bank. Previously, though, the big challenge around why distributed energy had been difficult to deploy widespread and at scale in the past was because of the complexity of systems. Because when you have multiple different types of energy sources and loads, AC, DC, different voltages, that requires a lot of equipment to be able to manage and integrate that seamlessly. And because of that, every single site was designed uniquely from scratch, and it's just not cost effective. It's not scalable, creates a lot of failure points. DG Matrix has now flipped that on its head, where we can say we've got a single unit solution that can integrate all of these different sources and loads simultaneously and effectively eliminate the systems engineering associated with distributed energy systems. You can eliminate the bespoke nature of these deployments. And so with a single standardized hardware solution, you can deploy across hundreds, thousands of sites with the exact same hardware. And you shift all of that flexibility into the software layer. So the antidote for grid interconnection challenges is behind the meter energy, and specifically simplified behind the meter energy solutions like those that DG Matrix is deploying for our clients in the data center and electrification spaces.
It's great. Um, skill sets. I would love to pick your brain on, I mean, we're on the staffing side of things. A lot of the people that we place could be from engineers to construction management, safety, really any type of personnel that you need to bring these projects online. Commissioning is very big right now. But I'm curious from your vantage point, what type of skill sets are we hurting for to get these projects done?
It's a great question. The one that I will emphasize is adaptability and speed. Architectures are changing so quickly. I mean, just look at the data center world. There's all these conversations around not only shifting from an AC architecture to a DC architecture, but 400 volts, plus minus 400 volts, 800 volts, all of these different types of solutions. And if you go and ask all of the big data center companies, they will all tell you something a little bit different. So it's very, very important that the companies as well as the individuals can think outside of conventional standards, that can be very adaptable, and to think through the future proofing element of these solutions. We don't want to deploy stranded assets. We don't want to have companies on path dependency with legacy architectures that are not going to be scalable for the future of energy. And so that is very important. The second one is around systems thinking and software fluency. Very similar to the analogy of how DG Matrix with solid state transformer platform is turning an analog transformer into a digital software defined flexible platform. The standards that wrote the grid initially are rapidly being changed. Bidirectional power conversion systems, grid interactivity, grid services are all kind of rewriting the rules in terms of how we think about energy infrastructure and what the future of the grid looks like. So people who can have the systems level thinking rather than just the rigid standards thinking is very, very important. And the last one that I'll emphasize, and I'm sure everybody says this, is AI. DG Matrix is very focused on building an AI native company and embedding that ethos across all aspects of the company. We're implementing it in engineering design, in production testing, in sales and marketing, and application engineering, every single thing you can think of. And the results that we've been able to realize are absolutely extraordinary in terms of reducing failure points, increasing system reliability, speeding up design cycles, speeding up sales cycles. Been absolutely incredible. So people, especially young people, who can bring that new perspective around how you can embed AI within legacy systems and processes, massive, massive market for those skills.
Awesome. And that kind of leads into the next question. So for young people that are thinking about energy, what are some things they can do to position their career, maybe skill sets that they can develop? And I'd like to throw a little maybe additional question in there too. Maybe someone who's more seasoned in their career, but you mentioned all these new technology areas. What are something that they could think about that would help them to work with an AI native company such as yours?
Most important thing, and I'll take this back to the first question, is to have conversations. I firmly believe that the best way to learn, best way to build new skills is to talk to people who are in the areas that interest you and who have the skills that you want to develop. So the number one piece of advice that I'll give to anyone, especially early career professionals, is to go out there and have conversations, build your network. It's not just about who you know, it's about who knows you, and those relationships are incredibly valuable. The broader piece of advice that I also give, especially to young people, is just to start anything. You will learn more about yourself, about other people, about the work that you like, about how to create value, about how to sell by starting something. It can be a company, it can be a blog, it could be a podcast, school club, doesn't matter. Go and start something and start building those reps and building those skills, because that will also give you a platform to go build your network and have conversations with people. And for people more seasoned in their career, I mean, I think AI is definitely changing a lot. Getting comfortable with AI tools and technology is always something that's very important. And I would get back to the same thing of just having conversations. With how fast everything is changing, it's all about who you know and how fast you can move rather than a fixed knowledge set.
Awesome. And I know DG Matrix is obviously growing. What are some things you've learned from that side about building a culture, building a team that you can share?
Excellent question. First and foremost is that is the most important thing about building a company is the culture and the people, and nothing like having an absolutely incredible team of A+ all-stars all rowing in the same direction. That is the only way to do it and to be successful. I mean, over the last few years, DG Matrix has grown from 0 to about 250 people globally. So very, very rapid growth. And I think keeping the standards of people very high is important, especially as the company goes above the mark where the initial folks, like the founders, are making all of the hiring decisions, where you're starting to bring in a broader group of people. Keeping the standards very high and making sure that everybody is motivated around the mission. And then the last thing that I'll add is that the leadership is absolutely critical. The reason why I started at DG Matrix is because of the leadership of Harun Anam, our CEO, and the relationship that I had with him, and not just his incredible successes and experience that he'd had in the industry, but on how he carries himself as setting an example for every single person in the company of unmatched work ethic and of setting such an inspiring vision that every single person in the company can't help but feel and know that we're working on something that is so, so much bigger. So both in terms of building a company, but also in terms of, people who are looking to join another company. The people is the most important thing, and look at the leadership, and that'll tell you where the company is going.
Yeah, and that definitely comes across when I speak to you. I can tell that you believe in where you're going, and frankly, I do too after our conversation. So,
Good.
one more, then I'll ask one that I like to ask all of our guests here. But if you were speaking to say you were going back to Duke and speaking to a room of folks in their 20s, what attribute would you say is more important than, technical abilities or skills that you would say is important to focus on?
I'll give you two of them. Confidence in working with people who are much more senior than you, and a bias for action and just getting started. For people earlier in their career, and I very much feel grateful for the experience I had with Energy Terminal of getting very, very comfortable working with very senior energy executives. Everybody that we were working with was, quite frankly, older than my parents. So 20, 30 plus years older than me, had a long, successful career. And I think a lot of us grow up with a mentality of, you know, of course, respecting people who are older and more experienced than you. And that's, of course, very important, but also learning to work with people who are much more experienced and being confident that you have a perspective that is worth sharing. So feel comfortable speaking up, feel comfortable speaking your mind and sharing what you believe, because they're not necessarily expecting you to have all the answers when you're working with people very experienced. They don't expect you to have all the answers, but what you can do is have a unique perspective and ask the right questions. So get yourself exposure to senior executives, to people who are much more experienced with you, learn by osmosis, and get comfortable with those working relationships. The last one is just get started. Nobody's going to wait for you. And the best way to get stuff done is to start before you're ready. Because quite frankly, you will never be ready if you're waiting for that perfect moment where you feel like you've got the perfect idea, you've got the perfect plan. Never going to work. Just get started, have a bias for action, and start before you're ready, and you'll be amazed at the results.
That's great advice. I love it. And one thing I do, being in the energy sector a number of years, but, if I'm talking to someone who's run a refinery for 30 years and I don't feel, that little imposter syndrome, I say, hey, I live in New England. If I wasn't participating in the energy sector, it'd be a very rough couple of months in the winter without our natural gas heat. So, we're all users of energy in some way. We all participate in that economy in some way. So it's important to all of us. So that's one thing I like to remind myself and others too. But the last question, and I've asked this to all of my guests so far, is like, say you're 10 years in the future, so we're, almost entering 2036. What's the most important project type or technology type that you think, it could be anything relating to energy, but would you say?
Distributed energy infrastructure. We firmly believe that the future is distributed. That is the best way to capitalize on the demands and the needs of AI, as well as electrification, without straining the utility. And it's also much more capital efficient. So deploying 1,000 1 megawatt projects is much faster, is much more cost effective than spending $1 billion on these big mega projects. So firmly believe that the future is distributed. I'll give one quick shout out on that, is that Bill Nussey, who's a very good friend of DG Matrix and a mentor to me personally, wrote an excellent book called Freeing Energy. So anybody who wants to learn more about DER's local energy, as Bill coins it, go check that out. And the second thing is that the future is software defined as well. So flexibility and modularity are going to be two of the most critical attributes of energy infrastructure going forward. Architectures are changing, voltages are changing, use cases may change. And the people who build the energy infrastructure that is flexible, that is modular, that is able to adapt, that is able to be redeployed are really the ones who are going to win.
It's awesome. And we'll have to link that book here in the episode too, so anyone else can check it out that's interested. Thank you so much, Michael. Really enjoyed, having you on. I think you've got a really bright, future ahead, and as well as DG Matrix. So I'm excited to follow along and help out where we can. But where can folks go and get more information if they want to check you guys out or reach out?
dgmatrix.com. Go check out our website and feel free to reach out to me directly as well on LinkedIn or anywhere else. We've got a very excited and passionate team building the future of energy. And for those interested in potentially working with us and joining us, we have a significant hiring ramp coming up and look forward to working with the brightest people across the industry and beyond.
Awesome. And hopefully we can bring some of our network and get them over to you guys as well. Look forward to keeping the conversation going, Michael, and, really appreciate your time today.
Appreciate it, Luke. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.